This is Creating Your Life on Sex and Romance, episode 40, Male Consciousness. This is Marc-Andre Alexander back for more Sex and Romance. Today, male consciousness, the interesting differences between men and women. And that's really what we're focusing on this time is we're going to show that, in a sense, there are two kinds of consciousness in people, and everybody contains some of both, whether they realize it or not. Some are just very predominantly male, some very predominantly female. And if you have doubts about it, think about it, because you've probably run into people, you've probably seen female consciousness in a male body or male consciousness in a female body. And in some cases, I think that we go through different modes. So in some certain circumstances, my gender is male, but I would exhibit male consciousness. But maybe in certain situations, more female consciousness comes in. But today, we're focusing on male consciousness and what are the differences? What are its particular characteristics? So as you can see here, I have an image of a line and a circle, and in a very simple way, it's easy to say that male consciousness is linear. It's like a line, whereas female consciousness is a circle. And what do I mean by that? Well, first, let's look at it a little bit humorously. I'm going to pull up a short little video, and it's called Keep It Simple. You can find this on YouTube.
Hey guys, I can't see anything on my screen. Is the server down?
We'll check.
Let's check out the network.
Should we ping the router or just telnet to the server?
Might want to give it a kill.
Kill the TCP/IP.
Or we just program the flux compositor to fire sesquipedalia flux agitation to achieve hyper-extended bogonic outputs that can translate enough terabyte of code to override any network saturation.
Yeah, I'm not sure that'll allow our client to reroute any quantum quasi-denominator compressions.
Sure, or we just quark the paradisium inputs for zeta reactions that will completely pump any-bombastic ramifications without reversing the Tron matrix beta or avoiding the submicroactive uplink and fry the entire system.
Hey guys, I found the problem. I just didn't have my monitor turned on.
Yeah, that's what we thought too.
Yeah, we were just about to tell you that.
Yeah.
So there is a case made for keeping it simple. But what this is really demonstrating is something very interesting about male consciousness. And let's go through some of these details. Let's talk about male consciousness in terms of men. Men tend to gravitate towards what is external, linear, focused, direct, explicit. They're outer directed in a very interesting way. So men tend to be more interested in external activities, sports, and politics, or at least the male consciousness is. It's about the external world, not so much about the internal world. Tools and electronics, cars and machines, mechanisms, wireless controls, anything that's kind of cool technology-wise tends to be something male consciousness is interested in, because male consciousness is more interested in the external world. Building things, taking them apart. I mean, it's very male to look at something and, well, what is it? And start messing with it, or start fixing it. We're big into fixing things. Model ships and airplanes, remote control cars, airplanes and helicopters. This does not mean that females cannot do the same kind of things. We're not talking about what people do. We're talking more about what their orientation is. That's why male consciousness will tend to get into playing soldier, shooting guns, fishing, hunting, running around, being rowdy, being physical, being direct and explicit and focused into this external thing. Now, I'm gonna tell you a little story. It's a camping trip story, and this is a true story that was published. Once a high school graduating class was taken on a camping trip in the desert. There was a creative writing teacher who had set this up, and she had decided to lead the students on an exercise to develop their imaginations to make them more sensitive. So all the students were given notebooks, pens, candles, and matches. The instructions were pretty simple. Walk a short way into the desert. This was a desert trip. Find a place alone and proceed to, quote, discover yourself. So what did the girls do? They followed instructions. What did the boys do? Well, the boys, since the assignment baffled them, they gathered together, piled up their notebooks, lit them with matches, and started a bonfire. I mean, I think this is a good story to illustrate where the teacher was giving them an activity that was internal. And, boys, or the male consciousness is not necessarily automatically adept at internal things. It's more external. Here, hey guys, we're together. What are we going to do? So what do we do in the external world? And that in some ways accounts for what's happening. Male consciousness, for men, they find joy in assembling complex electronic equipment and mastering a complex remote control. This is why, entertainment centers and man caves and these kind of things are computer equipment. It's something that's very much male oriented. Competitive sports, memorizing baseball stats and getting data on the players and teams. There's a lot of men who are really into this kind of thing. Women too, and they'll do the same thing. But I would argue, and especially when we next time go into female consciousness, point out that everybody has both, and in certain things, the male side can come up. But if you understand the fundamental distinctions between male consciousness and female consciousness, it goes a long way to explaining what would otherwise be unexplainable behavior. Male consciousness loves to solve problems and fix things, achieve goals, and win. And we'll see next time a rather humorous example of this. As boys, boys tend to be really direct and unsophisticated. They need to be civilized. It's something they need to kind of be trained into being more aware and more sensitive, because they can get rowdy. They can bounce around. The external world is the external world. It's not as much about self-reflection or considering feelings. They don't really examine their inner motivations. There's a few who might, obviously, because there's no way to typecast this completely. The idea, though, is male consciousness is external, not internal. It's about the world and things in the world and manipulating those things. It's not about the interior relationships and feelings and ideas. Males tend to be more uncomfortable there because it's not their natural orientation. These kind of behaviors need attention. So that's why females and adults tend to say, oh, we have to take these boys. I would give you an example. Find a parent family that has 3 boys, and then find one that has 3 girls and talk to them about the differences, and you'll get a real good idea. I've known parents with 3 boys, and you can almost see it's almost like a battlefield in some ways. The parents can be kind of shell-shocked because of all that male energy bouncing out in the world, and it's a tough thing to bring in. Whereas 3 girls, the female energy is much different. It's much more manageable, at least initially. Male consciousness, it tends to be simple, playful, action-oriented, doing something. It's less about being something. Let me tell you another story. This is from Dave Barry's Complete Guide to Guys, and if you can get the audio version of it, it's just simply great. He tells a good long story. I'm not gonna read you the story, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of summarize it for you to give you a flavor of it. It's about a young woman and a young man. They've been dating for about 6 months, and then one evening he drives her home, and she's been thinking about this. She's been thinking about this relationship, wondering where it's going to go. So she says something like, as of tonight, we've been together for 6 months. And there's silence. And she begins thinking that what she says may bother him, or that perhaps she's placing some kind of obligation on him or pushing him into something. And she begins questioning herself and the fact that he's not saying anything. Meanwhile, he's thinking, wow, 6 months. And then she goes off examining their relationship and her motives and where they could be going. Is it marriage and children? And he's thinking, 6 months, that means we met after I took the car in for service. And wow, look at the odometer. I'm way overdue for an oil change. And she's thinking about what he might want from the relationships, issues of intimacy and commitment. And perhaps she's been putting too much pressure on him, and he's thinking about how he may have been ripped off by that car mechanic at that last time. And she's thinking, he looks mad. Perhaps I said something too soon. And when they actually start talking, and she says something that he's like, huh? He has no idea that she was interpreting all of this internally, whereas he's kind of focused on the external world, the practicalities of it. And pretty rapidly, he's in a point where he just doesn't understand. He doesn't even know what the right thing to say is. His world is very simple. Whereas she has been applying a lot of interior meaning and subtext to what his silence could have meant. And this is kind of the difference. One way of looking at it, women can come up with a very, very large internal narrative, and they can share that with other females in a way that makes sense and it works. And it's a way of looking at the world, whereas males tend to not have that inner narrative as much. They're more externally oriented. They're going to interpret very explicit things. I remember hearing about a case of a man and a woman driving down the road. They were on a trip, and after being on the road over an hour, the wife asks her husband, so, are you interested in stopping for some coffee or something? He goes, no, I want to get there. And he drives on another half an hour, 45 minutes. She says, are you sure you don't want to stop to get something to eat? And he goes, no, we'll just keep going. And he keeps driving. And a half hour later, she's getting really frustrated. And he says, what? And she goes, I've been telling you I need to use the restroom. Now, the thing is, as we'll see, men do not really, their default setting is not subtext. They're not getting the indirect meanings from something that's very naturally female. And this is something that David Barry illustrates wonderfully. In our next episode, we're going to actually go into some extension of this. We're going to talk about the war against boys. In the meantime, go to marcandrealexander.com. I got a blog there, some essays, and information on my new book. Take care.